Welcome to the D&D Fitness Radio Podcast, brought to you by your hosts, Don Saladino from New York City and Derek Hansen from Vancouver, Canada.
I went through those. I went through the Joe Rogan video. I was able to get through most of the YouTube video of
the lecture.
Of the lecture. What was the gentleman's name again?
Sinclair, I think.
Yeah.
So he's
is it
got
Robert?
a book.
It's not Robert. Is it Robert Sinclair?
David, I think. David
That's
Sinclair.
it.
And I saw the book before, like I think it's a 2019 release or 2020, and it was about lifespan. And I thought the interesting thing was he had made a comment in another interview, like the guy's like, well, I'm, doing a ketogenic diet, or I'm just eating mostly meat and I feel good, right? And he made the point of like, well, just because you feel good now doesn't mean it's necessarily in your best interest for your long-term health, right? And just this idea that reduced consumption has been shown overwhelmingly by the science that it increases longevity and health, long-term health. And so I was telling somebody, because I'm like turning 52, and I'll wake up some mornings like this joint hurts, that joint hurts, and I think obviously some of it is hormonal. Anybody I've talked to who's middle-aged and will have the same thing, and then if they go on like testosterone or GH or something, they're like, yeah, I feel wonderful. So I was kind of looking into different things, and I stopped drinking coffee, and that seems to help. It helps me sleep better. And now I'm looking at caloric restriction because I can't out exercise my consumption. That's the one thing I noticed, right? Like when I was 20, I could eat anything because I trained 6 days a week, sometimes twice a day. And I was like a blast furnace. But now it's like I'm eating, like I'll sit down and I'll see what my son eats. He's 16. I'm sure he eats 2 to 3 times what I'm eating now. It's crazy. But I find I get the best results in terms of energy and composition by just eating less, like generally.
Listen, I think it's really interesting. I think there's a lot of value to it. But now I'm like, there's so many. I feel like that there's so many pros and cons right now, and he's claiming, well, the goal is in your 80s and 90s to be feeling better, and I completely understand that. But is that, and I understand how he went back and he said, well, 6 million years ago, it was something that, he was like 6 million years ago, we, people didn't need to eat all the time, and they didn't eat all the time, and they had to go for a period of time where they were fasting. What was the life expectancy back then, by the way? I forget. Was it like
probably
35?
Like 40, 30, 40.
Yeah, 40,
right?
40, 35. So I don't know, like, why are we always going back to 6 million years ago or the caveman eras and comparing ourselves to them? Like I said, my grandmother and her 4 sisters, I've said this on the podcast, all 4 of them lived between the ages of 96 and 105. I think it was 95 or 96. I always get they ate 3 square meals a day. Like, they eat good balanced diets. Like, if you look at David Sinclair, the guy looks like he's 120 pounds soaking wet. Right?
Yeah,
like John Berardi talked about restricted eating too. John Berardi says that around, whatever it is, 12, 1 o'clock, he's having a huge bowl of like meat and vegetables and grains or sweet potato, whatever it is. And he's doing another one in the evening. Like, all right, like John's a very healthy guy. He's very, very smart at what he does. I understand that. But is he making that same recommendation to a professional athlete or someone trying to put muscle on? Or someone trying to compete in the Olympics, or someone trying to, or a young, college athlete or high school athlete, or someone like myself, like I've done restricted eating. I feel good on restricted eating. Robert Yang, our nutritionist that we brought on here, our good friend, has done restricted eating after a period of time. He feels great. And then after a period of time, I think he noticed that he got a bit weaker and, performance might've diminished a little bit. And I don't know, like, I want to be healthy in my 80s and 90s. I do. I hands down do. But I think that the message starts becoming a little bit muffled. People start starving themselves fasting, not starving themselves, fasting. They adapt over a period of time. And out of nowhere, in the evenings are coming and they're not eating the way they should be eating, or their lunchtime's coming and they're not getting enough macronutrients in. So I think for someone like David, yeah, will he live to be 105? Who knows? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's really important for me in my 40s, 50s, and 60s to be performing at a high level. I really want, there's a lot I want to do out of my life. Yes, my 80s and 90s, if I can move better, feel better, yes. But I focus more on not having alcohol. I never do drugs. I try and get 8 hours of sleep a night. I try and shop organic. I try and do all these things. I've gotten myself into a less stressful environment. I do all these things that have to do with recovery and exercise, and I'm happy, and all these things that are important. Are people going to suddenly hear? And this is the problem: people suddenly hear, "Oh, well, restricted eating is good. I'm going to do that," and that's just an excuse. Oh, I'm lazy. I don't want to eat. And then that's the people who are going to be doing it. So I understand what he's saying. I understand the science. Then he gets into talking about a pill, right? Like, oh, well, we're going to be able to give you a pill, which is going to be like your own. I'm like, come on, man. What do you want me to say here? Are you saying this is for everyone? Like, I don't know. That's the question that I don't know. So I know what I'm saying right now isn't science backed, but I don't know. You're removing calories from someone's life. What is that going to do?
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing was that I think he differentiated between like what works when you're young versus when you get older. And I think
Right.
that's the one thing I've noticed, right? Like, is that there's a point, and obviously you're about 10 years younger than me. And so, I'm curious to see how you go through the next 10 years and see if you notice some differences. Cause I do notice some differences. Like I would say in my early 40s, I could still do a lot of, things physically, where now I could probably do it, but there's consequences, right? And I'm a lot more careful now, and even with my eating, I think I've noticed a significant difference in the last 5 to 8 years, where I'm like, okay, I just can't do that anymore. So that's the funny thing that I thought was like, something that worked for you, like, eating a lot and putting on muscle, it for me, it doesn't seem like it works as well. Like, so that's why I'm actually looking at different ways to, reduce consumption, especially when I don't, you know, when I
Need
don't
it?
need to.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you have to try it and you have to see what works for yourself over a period of time. I'm finding right now at 44, there are things that aren't working for me. I'm honestly in best shape I've been in at 44. My energy is the best it's been. My skin is the best it's been. My sleep quality is as high as it's been since I'm probably in my early 20s. And I really attribute that to low inflammatory foods. And I think a big problem that people have out there is alcohol. I think it's cheat meals. I think it's turning around and eating a lot of crap,
Oh,
eating a lot of
sugar
white
in
flour,
general,
white
right?
sugar, sugars, right. And that to me is a bigger problem, right? So what are we like? Well, let's just restrict our eating. And then, Joe Rogan's talking about, well, I don't eat until 11 a.m. because I work out really hard. Like I really, really, really push myself. And after that, I'll have like an apple and some protein, some meat. And I'm like, okay. And then he's like, then I don't eat again to dinner. And I'm like, all right, like fine. Like what are you having at dinner? Like, if he's having a 2,000 calorie dinner, is he in a deficit? Like my guess would be yes. He's probably still in a caloric deficit with that
Sure.
little bit of meat and that apple he's having. So now he's living in a deficit. And the thing I have experience with is seeing what happens to people as they're always in a deficit. If you are this guy, David Sinclair, actually he's a bad example because the guy thinks 120 pounds soaking wet. But if you are John Berardi, who actually holds some muscle, John, those 2 meals that John was getting in was substantial. And you could tell he's really trying to backload his calories. So that I'm like, I'm okay with. But how many people out there are taking John Berardi's approach? Like, I don't I don't know. Like, fine. Like, what if I am able to live to 95 and I'm able to, function at a high level and my body composition's good and my mood's good, and then I just die. It's like I'm just done. Like, well, if I maybe time restricted eating, am I going to live to 100? Like, who gives a shit at that point? Like, I don't care. Like, it's an extra 5 years. No, but it sounds terrible. I want those first 95 to be I want those 95 to be amazing. Like, I'm not going to start restricting things earlier on in life to get an extra 3 to 5 in there, And then my performance in those first 95 are going to be crap because I'm just undernourished. But yes, oh, well, you get used to it. I believe that. He's right. I understand. I've seen it. I've worked with thousands and thousands of people to where, yes, you will adapt. But if you're in a caloric restriction, if you're on a calorie restricted diet all the time, your body's going to adapt to less calories. Everyone I've been around who's, the majority, the general pop, not the John Berardis, not the David Sinclairs. I'm not talking about these guys. They are the 0.0001%. People are not like those guys. They're not going to do those sort of things. I had a famous actor who would do time restricted eating, and then he'd have a healthy lunch and he'd not eat to dinner. And he's like doing it for months. And I'm like, what'd you have for dinner? He's like, 2 burgers and a vodka. I'm like, well, what are you doing? I don't know, man. What do you want me to say? I'm hungry. I'm like, he's not going to get it. He's not going to get it. He doesn't want to change. He's not going to sit there and he's not going to eat what John's eating or what I would eat. So I don't know. I mean, it's.
Well, the interesting part that I thought was that he said, in times of deprivation, like from caloric restriction, there's certain things that will be switched on, certain, genetic things in your body, right? Which I thought was interesting because I've been looking at blood flow restriction recently, like as part of rehab and all that. And I think that's kind of the same concept where you're depriving your body of oxygen and then it creates a super compensation effect, right? And
Right.
so I think there's some things in there that are very interesting to me as well as part of, regeneration, rehab and all that as well. So there seems to be some commonalities.
No,
Um,
100%. But my question is do you have to time restrict your eating every day?
I don't know. He seemed to think that, or he seemed to say that it's not necessarily about, I think, total, calories and all that, but it was more about timing. So, like, if he switched everything to one time when he ate, one time per day, one meal per day, it was better than if it was spread over the day. So, again, I have to go
He's
into
saying
it a little.
he's saying energy level. He's saying energy levels. He's saying brain function, and I agree.
Yeah.
I like when I have a talk, I will do well on not eating before the talk, or actually better than not eating, having a high protein, high fat vegetable meal. That I feel really helps with brain function and energy. So yeah, if I'm going in and I'm having carbohydrates before a workout or carbohydrates before a talk, I may get that type of crash. Now, my question is, maybe we start getting into the discussion of, metabolic flexibility, right? So metabolic flexibility is where your body can change. You have two energy storages, right? You have two macronutrients that feed your energy storages: fats and carbohydrate. Carbohydrates are utilized much easier. Fats become a little bit more difficult. And I think what ends up happening is a lot of us eat the same all the time, where we suddenly do not have any more metabolic flexibility. And I've noticed that when you turn around and you're able to train to develop more metabolic flexibility, that you're able to utilize fat and you're able to utilize carbohydrates. That's where companies like Lumen, they're starting to put products out where you can measure CO2 and you can basically balance day to day and turn on, whether you're burning fat at a certain point of the day or carbohydrates at a certain point of the day. I think there's some value to this. Now, do I know that a product like that is 100% accurate? No, but I think there is
Is
some
that the
value.
product where they kind of breathe into it and then it
Yeah,
gives them a
yeah,
reading?
and this is what's fascinating to me. Is it the fasting piece of it, or is it the fact that we aren't utilizing our nutritional variability the way that we need to be utilizing it, and are we just so caught in one? Let me give you an example. I have a bodybuilder friend of mine who literally has metabolic damage. I don't care if someone says if it's an issue or not. It is 100%. I've spoken to a couple of doctors. I see what he's going through. It's shit. He's 200. He's big. He's getting like the 250-pound range. He's got more muscle than I'll ever have, and his body is so used to consuming high levels of protein, low levels of carbohydrates, excuse me, low levels of fat, that his body right now is converting proteins into his energy source, which is an unnatural process. And he can't utilize fats or carbohydrates as his energy source. And because of this, anytime he has carbs or too much carbs, he puts on like 6 pounds of weight in one day and he gets freaked out. So, what are we doing over time? We're getting his body to adapt to utilizing fats and carbohydrates slowly every week. We're bumping them up 100 calories every week. And by doing that, he's like, oh my God, I'm getting more vascular. Oh my God, I gained some weight, but now it's coming off. Like, how's your energy? My energy's starting to pick up. Things are starting to happen. Right. So what's the end goal here? Is it for me to put someone in I understand about living longer. There's probably some value. Yeah. And I would agree with that. I just, at what point are we just getting at what point are we not focusing on the main thing that we need to be focusing on? Stop eating shit, stop drinking alcohol, stop not getting enough rest, start doing those things. Oh, and you know what? If you have breakfast, you're going to be all right. Like, it's just, you know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, well, don't have breakfast. Don't have breakfast. You're going to live longer without breakfast. Like, it turns on a gene in your body that's going to help slow down the aging process. Now people are like, oh, screw it. I don't need to have breakfast. And they're not going to have breakfast. It's all that they want to hear. And then they're not going to eat enough at lunch. And then they're hearing Joe Rogan talking about some on it jerky that he's having with cranberries in it midday. And they're like, oh, I'll just have that. And by the time they're going to dinner, they've had 400 calories for the day, and then they're famished and they're fighting cravings. And then they're like, then they're not Berardi, or they're not me, where they're like able to keep, the train on the tracks, and then they're falling off. They're eating crap. I don't know. I don't know about the message. I don't know. I know I'm ranting right now. Sorry.
Yeah, well, certainly, it can be taken to the extreme, and somebody could say like, yeah, I'm skipping breakfast, but I'm, doing crack and, doing plyometrics off the top of a building. So yeah, they can still mess themselves up. But I
Like,
think,
what are we doing?
yeah,
What are we doing? Like, how many people in the strength and conditioning world are trying to find ways to be optimal in certain categories, and they're not paying attention to the basics. They're not like, this is the basics. I want to get faster. Like I read this book on this to improve speed, and you're like, well, are you doing sprint training? Well, not really. It's like, you're like, okay, you want to get faster, right? You would think you'd have to do some speed training, right? Like, you're focusing on all these other areas, to get faster, but you're not actually working on speed through sprinting. You don't find it's the same comparison.
yeah. I mean, it's like anything, right? Like, you have to have everything in order, right? Um, and making sure you have the right amounts of everything, the right amount of speed training, right amount of resistance training, the right amount of rest, the right amount of mobility and flexibility work, right? But there's probably a sector of the population, I don't know, 20% that get it, and then the other 80% are doing what you're saying, like, just you know picking a fad and just going to the extreme, or not listening, or just generally bad behavior. But and I would say that that happens in the performance industry as well, where there's a very small percentage of people who are doing everything right and are very disciplined, and then the rest of it's a free for all. So um that's so I'm just like, for my own personal health, I'm thinking, okay, well, I can pull a little bit from there, I can pull a little bit from
Yeah.
there, and just go, okay, let's try to put this all together so it does work, so I am getting all the proper nutrients and proportions and all that. But I can curb my consumption here, because you know I think as an athlete, I could, like I said, I could eat anything. And then I remember I was at working for a pro team, and then if you go there, like, they have chefs and everything, and there's food everywhere. And I'm like, oh my god, this is crazy. Like, if I worked here, I'd probably overeat. Um,
Right.
so I think you just kind of catch yourself once in a while and go like, okay, well, how do I balance everything out and make sure I'm on the right track? Because it's so easy to fall prey to urges and availability. And I would say, for the most part, most of the people that I encounter, like, working in physical therapy, I was working in a physiotherapy clinic the last couple of years, and most of the people with back problems, guess what would you say was their major thing when you saw them?
Sitting.
Sitting, and they're overweight.
Yeah, they're, of course, of course, of
Yeah.
course.
And they don't work out and they don't eat properly and they don't sleep, all the things that you mentioned there, right? So um, most of these problems have to be dealt with on a comprehensive, holistic level, not just like you said, like don't eat. Well, that's not, well, you got to exercise
Well,
too.
well, well, like, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of when someone comes to me and they're like, "Oh my God, I gotta work on my flexibility." And I'm like, all right, well, I don't like, is it flexibility? Is it stability? Like, what is it? Like, so many people come to me and they're just like, well, especially women, they're just overly mobile. They're, call it what you want, hypermobile. And
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not a flex. You always feel tight because you're just nothing stable. Like, we have to work on stability.
Yes.
And they're like, well, I have to work on my flexibility. I'm like, I get what you're saying. I'm like, well, they're like, what do I do? I'm like, what? Tell me about your job. Well, I get into work at 8 o'clock. I basically would get up for lunch and I sit there till probably 5, 6 o'clock. I'm like, so you basically sit for 9 to 10 hours a day. And they're like, yeah, great. I'm like, cut that in half. Well, are there any stretches? Yeah, sure. We'll get to that. But tomorrow, in the next couple of days, can you try and set an alarm for every 30 minutes? Sit for 30, stand for 30. I'll try. And they're like, oh, it was hard. Well, three to 5 days later, how's your body feeling? A lot better. I'm like, exactly. Like, you think it's going to come, like, it's all going to, what, 10 hours of sitting is going to get fixed by 5 to 10 minutes of stretching? Like, are you mad? Are you crazy? Like, um, I was, and I can actually talk about this, but Ryan's shooting a movie with Will Farrell where he's doing a lot of dancing and it's unbelievable. But Ryan now is stretching like 3 times a day at like 15 to 20 minutes. And he's like, my body feels great. I'm like, yeah, because you're spreading that out over time, which I think is fantastic. And you're moving and you're not sitting in your job and you're dancing and you're getting your body to move. And think about that. Like, when's the last time you've been moving like this at work where you've actually had to demand, this development in elasticity out of your body, doing all this reactive work? And the first week or two, it was like, all right, walking through mud. And now it's like your body's free and it's going. Like, all right, great. Is it suddenly this one stretch, or is it the fact that he's spreading out movement over time? The time restricted eating. I am not arguing with David Sinclair. I am nowhere near as smart as him. I am not a doctor. I have not studied this stuff for centuries. But you're comparing ourselves to people who lived 6 million years ago, who had a life expectancy of probably 40 years of age. All right. The message that we're giving to the general public, I think, is the wrong message because most of them can't get the basics down pat. Now, if they're time restrict, this is my question. If they're time restricting their eating for 16 hours, which is typical intermittent fasting, there's different levels of intermittent fasting, but the 16 off, 8 hours on of eating is typical IF. And then they can't get that remaining 8 hours down tight and they're eating like crap. Is that better for them than if someone who's going to go eat 3 really healthy square meals a day and get enough rest and have a high level of energy and get fruits and vegetables and organic proteins, right? And they're detoxifying their body with nutrition, right? Nutrition, food is medicine. Like, that's how we detox our bodies, is through hydration and nutrition. So now we're just telling people not to eat, but like, Joe Rogan, talk about your dinner. He's like, well, my dinner might be a protein. And Joe Rogan was doing the carnivore diet for a while, which I think is terrible. How is eating meat? How is eating only meat? Now, yeah, do it. Like, figure stuff out for yourself. I've tried it for the sake of trying. I knew it was going to happen. My stomach started bothering me. Like, I didn't feel right. Like, how is that okay? Like, where are your micronutrients? Like, where are your vitamins and fiber and minerals and all this stuff? I don't understand. So I think it's an interesting topic. I think it's
But
good for a small percentage of people.
but you think it's a shortcut, essentially. That's
Shortcut to I think the majority of people are going to use it as a shortcut. I went through the comments.
yeah.
Like, oh, this is great. I don't like eating anyway. I'm lazy. So
Yeah, I
someone
don't
who's
like
saying
exercise. I don't like
no, no,
exercise.
no, no, but someone who's saying they're lazy in a comment, and they were below, like, oh, this is great. I don't like eating anyway. Oh, it was great. I'm not hungry in the morning. Well, you're not used to eating in the morning, so your body adapts to not eating in the morning, which is why you're not hungry. Oh, I'm lazy. So if you're lazy with your eating, how are you going to be with, consuming a high quality of food later in the day? You're probably going to be lazy. You're not going to sit there and put in the time. You're going to restrict calories now, and the calories you're putting into the body aren't high quality calories. You're not Dr. Perlmutter. Dr. Perlmutter is like, oh, okay, like, I question whether the guy ever eats anything bad. If he goes to Italy, oh, I have some pasta. Like, sure you do. Like, fine, it's cooked in great olive oil from tomatoes, from they have no pesticides in it. Oh, you're having a glass of wine. Like, ooh, like really? Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who eat fast food. and we're having processed foods and all this other crap. Like, what message are we sending people? I can't tell you how many people come to me and I refer out. They almost don't even believe me. They're like, I'm consuming 1,000 calories a day. Like when Perlmutter came on and he's like, no, I disagree with you. He wasn't getting what I was saying. I was saying that people try and restrict their calories when when you're eating a high level of quality. Like when I'm sitting there to get 3,500 calories in, if I read to you the amount of food that I consume to have 3,500 calories, it probably would make up what you have in 2 days. I'm being honest. Like the amount of grass-fed meat, organic vegetables, sweet potato, grains. Like this is like I'm consuming a high. Like I've eaten twice already today. It's 10:30 a.m. Pacific time, right? So I'm eating a lot. That what someone's not used to consuming a high quality, high levels of food, and then they start eating healthy. That's why Michael Phelps was consuming 12,000 calories a day, because he said it in the video. It was very intelligent. I'm not eating this. Yeah, it tastes good. I'm eating General Chow's chicken. It's not helping my performance. I can't eat chicken, rice, and broccoli and expect to get this amount of calories down from eating that. It would not. It's too satiating. It's too filling. I couldn't consume all that food. So when someone turns around, they're used to eating like shit, and then they suddenly start restricting calorie. They suddenly start eating higher quality calories. Their caloric consumption, in my opinion, drops. If someone eats pizza in one day and McDonald's in one day, and then go to IHOP and they have like three meals that are all cheats, like those calories are going to be a hell of a lot more than if they wake up and they have organic eggs, cooked in olive oil with some vegetables, or wild fish with quinoa and broccoli, and for dinner a protein, a vegetable, and a carbohydrate. Where's the calorie comparison going to be? The healthy calories are going to be this further down. So now they're probably in a deficit. So if they're in a deficit and they're eating better calories and they're not losing weight, because they were, most people are already starting off in that deficit. They're trying to eat healthy all the time, and because of that, they're just not hitting their TDEE, their total daily energy expenditure. How many calories are you burning at rest and throughout the day through activity? They're not even hitting that number. So if they're not hitting that number, they're in a deficit. And if they're in a deficit, what do? You just start removing more calories. This is like, I had a rant on my social media the other day that you are already, if you are already in a deficit, how is removing more calories, getting you into even more of a deficit, going to help you lose weight? That I don't understand. Like the body is slowing down. Like Sinclair said, the body is going to adapt. So, holy shit, did I just go off there? I'm sweating like a bullet right now because it's literally 110
You're making me hungry.
God, I gotta drink some water. I'm gonna have a heart attack right now.
What'd you eat today?
Breakfast, I had a high protein, high fat breakfast with vegetables. So I had 2 cups of cabbage. I had 5 whole eggs cooked in a teaspoon of coconut oil, with a organic turkey sausage to up the protein. And I had that as my first meal at about 6:30 a.m. And then, because I'm on the road right now, I had 2 scoops of Thorne protein powder and a cup of gluten-free oats, because I'm going to go work out before this, and I have a period of time where I'm not going to go into the workout feeling lethargic. Then after the workout today, I'm going to have 8 ounces of chicken, probably 8 ounces of brown rice, and at least a cup to 2 cups of veggies. And then I'll start tapering down my carbohydrates as my activity starts dropping a bit.
So what what percentage of Americans eat like you? Is it less than 1%?
Yeah, 100%.
That's
but
crazy.
Look at me right now. I don't think I had coffee today. Look at me. I'm like my energy looks low. Like, what are you, crazy? I'm out of my mind right now. I'm sitting here sweating. Granted, it's 100 degrees outside, but is this? I'm going to start removing calories from me every day now. I'm going to start removing meals. Like I need to improve my energy level. Like my brain clarity is just fine. Like my energy level is just fine. Is that a testament to me having good calories, or having good calories over a period of time? Where over a period of time, my fat burning furnace is elevated. Over a period of time, it has detoxified my body. A woman recently came to me, was drinking 15 cups of coffee a day. 15 cups of coffee a day.
Wow. That's
So
IV level.
I brought Dr. Gabrielle on to one of our Challenger podcasts. I'm sorry, our Challenger call, and we got her to kill coffee cold turkey. She's like 3-4 weeks in. Are you getting headaches anymore? No, the headaches went away quick. How do you feel? Crappy. Energy levels bad. Energy levels high during one point. It's really low. Like the highs are high and the lows are low, and it's happening a lot. Like, what do I do for my energy level? You know what I said? I said, I know how you're eating. Hang in there. She just checked in with me the other day. I think it was her 10-week mark. I'm like, Erica, how do you feel? She looked at me and she went, I go, have you had coffee? She goes, no. How's your nutrition been? The exact same. I'm continually make little changes in the right direction, but getting, good whole foods, haven't really had any cheats, no caffeine. How's your energy level now? She's like, amazing. I say, are you getting those dips anymore? She goes, absolutely not.
So
I
that
am.
that
I get a little dip at 4 o'clock, and what do? I drink some water. I do 20 squats, and then I'm fine. I'm like, well, join the club. Most of us get a dip at 4 o'clock. I mean, that's. But what she's saying now is minuscule, minuscule. She's detoxified her body with high quality nutrition.
and you said that was about 10 weeks for her to really see to get out of that out from underneath the coffee and to really is that about right?
Yeah, I actually think that's really, I think from a caffeine standpoint, I've seen it around there, but I think like if someone's trying to get their hormones to repair, which maybe she had some hormonal damage. I'm not a doctor. I don't know, but I think it could take months.
Sure.
Think it could take way more than that. The fact she is where she is right now, and to be honest, I don't think she's ready to get back onto coffee. I think there might be some damage in there. I think things are really. I think she had an issue. So I'm not saying coffee's bad. I'm just saying that abusing coffee's bad. The problem I have, I keep saying it, is who are we speaking to? Who are we giving information to? When you're a coach, when you're David Sinclair, it's an interesting topic. But are we causing more harm than help by telling this world right now to stop eating for 16 hours when they've just struggled to get enough of the right calories in?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like it's almost like he's having the pendulum swing so far to one side to make a point, but practically it's probably not the best solution for individuals. But it is thought provoking, certainly.
Let me ask you, what's the goal anyway? I mean, is the goal for us to live as long as possible, or is the goal for us to live for as long as we possibly can with the highest level of quality? Like if you're able, I'm just curious, if you're able to go at 93 years old, but you were doing pull-ups till you were 93, like if you're able to do like pull-ups till you're 93 and still get on the track and move a bit and you were still healthy and you're still good, and that was it. That's when God said tap out. Like that's it. You're done. Or getting to 100 and you know the last 7 years are just rough. Like
I don't
what is
know.
the
I
goal?
I don't think you really know till you get there, right? Like, do you go, ah, shit, I just need to live to 90 and I'm fine. And then when you're 89, you're like, dang, I could squeeze out another 5 years of quality of life and I would enjoy it. So I don't know. That's a
I
really
know
good
my
question.
goal. I don't want to. My goal is I don't want to. I don't want to diminish. I don't want to diminish. I've never said this publicly. I don't want to diminish. I want to have a high quality of energy and movement and joint health,
Cognition.
cognition, most importantly, for as long as I can. But if that's 5 years sooner than that optimal number, fine. As long as I can, as long as when I'm tapping out, you know, my grandfather tapped out. God, I think at 86 years old, I think he was 83 or 86. He was young, unfortunately. His brain was sharp, sharp.
To the
Still
end?
move around till the end. Yeah, he was in the pool and he was using a noodle and the noodle slipped out from his arms and he went down. He went underwater, and his and the woman who was his nurse at the time, because my grandma just passed, we had someone living in the house. My parents said couldn't swim. She couldn't pull him out.
Oh, really? That's how he passed.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's how he
okay. So
passed.
it wasn't natural
That's how he
causes.
passed.
It was
No. But I went to dinner with him a week earlier. Amelia was a newborn. She was, me, my wife, and my grandfather were out at dinner with my daughter, who's in a little stroller, and my grandfather's drinking a couple vodkas, and I was like, screw it. I had a couple of Captain and diets, and you know, this was 14 years ago, right? And I remember going back to his house. He's walking me through the house. We're on his deck. We're looking at his view. He's telling me stories, and he was sharp. He's still going to work 4 days a week. He'd take a nap in the office, but in his early to mid 80s, he was still going into work. Like, he was sharp. His head was there, and that's my point. I think with me, when I go, and it's a terrible topic. I want to be able to have everything together. I want to be able to still go and do that stuff, do that activity level. I think sometimes going, it's all right. If I start restricting calories, am I going to lose muscle? I thought muscle was our body armor. Isn't the goal for us to be 90 years old with as much muscle, much natural muscle on our body as possible? I think so. My grandma fell in the early 80s. I'm sorry, in her early 80s, which I believe was the reason why she ended up passing, because she had to go in for a massive surgery, right? She was frail. She had more muscle on her body. Could her body have withstood the fall? Would that have been body armor? As we get older, people start losing their, cognition. They start losing their ability of resiliency. Like, shouldn't we, shouldn't we be trying to put muscle on? Like, isn't like bone density drops, muscle mass drops? Like, shouldn't that be the goal also? With that could potentially come a lot of other good stuff. If we're putting on muscle, we're getting enough protein, we're getting enough healthy nutrients to the body. I like to think so, if you're doing it the right way. So
Yeah.
won't that lead to other things as well? So what should the goal be here? I'm asking. I'm not telling anyone. I'm not sitting here saying I have the answers here. But my goal, for every person that I train, that is the elderly population. I want them to have body armor on their body. It's tough to do that with time restricted eating. All these people who are giving these talks about time restricted eating look like they weigh 120 pounds.
Yeah, they're in the lower weight class for sure. But yeah, certainly, like, I talking to a friend, and we heard that somebody passed, and they would have like 72, and had severe Alzheimer's as part of their decline. And I'm like, man. And I think this person was a coach too, but probably didn't take care of themselves. And I thought that was pretty tragic, like, passing at that age, and passing because of Alzheimer's and mental decline. And is that preventable? Is that something that they could have managed better throughout their life? And when does that start? Like, you always, even people who smoke, right? Like, they quit smoking. It's always a good time to quit smoking. And you'll still get benefits and regeneration and all that. But, I think it makes me wonder, like, how clean do you have to eat throughout your life to get the benefits,
Mm.
for both, like you said, quality and longevity? I mean, because that's the best of both worlds, right?
Well, I mean, I have a question for you. A lot of doctors have been talking about the ketogenic diet as a anti-Alzheimer's protocol, right?
Yeah.
And I think Alzheimer's is something we've been seeing. My two of my grandparents had it. They didn't exercise. They didn't know what exercise was. My one grandma, who didn't exercise at all, was in a wheelchair for 20 plus years, maybe 30 years. She died at 99.
It's crazy.
She was healthy to the end. And 99 years old, you're just kind of like, okay, like, what are you gonna do? But God forbid, if I don't, not God forbid, if I don't get Alzheimer's one day, is it because I wasn't eating grains, or I was doing time restricted eating, or how about that I just have trained my whole life and I've gotten a high quality level of fat, a high level of quality of fats in, or a high quality level of food in? Like, what is it coming down to? If my grandfather, who ate, my dad's side, who had Alzheimer's, who ate coffee cake every day and drank coffee and smoked a pipe, and someone could say, well, that can increase your risk of Alzheimer's. What if he worked out like me his entire life? Would he never have gotten it? I don't know. Like, maybe he would have gotten away with doing that stuff. Is it the time restricted eating? Like, we're going in and we're doing science. It's like, how do we really know? Like, we don't know. Oh, by the way, were those cavemen back then 6 million years ago? Like they were hunting their food. Like, okay, they were working out, they were fighting stuff. Like, what was it really like? Like, what was it really like? Were they like standing on top of a tree and seeing like a turkey run below them and just firing a spear at them? Because like, was that working out? Or were they walking around? Like, were they walking around hunting food all day? Were they wrestling boar? Because then I would say, all right, then they're getting some activity in. I don't think, were they wrestling boar? Like, what was this really like? Do we really know? I don't think anyone really does.
We know they weren't jogging.
They weren't jogging. Were they sprinting for their food? Like, do we really
Yeah.
know? Do we really know? Like, we start putting this assumption together. Why would someone turn around and say, well, 6 million years ago, this is what they would do, and the life expectancy was half of what ours is now? Like, why?
They weren't training on Bosu balls. I know that for a fact.
They definitely weren't doing that. Well, the life expectancy would have been cut in half. They would have been living to 15, 20. I don't know. This is kind of, turn around and take this data and use it. Like, what would I do personally with time restricted eating? I think there's value to it. I might throw it in on my off days. Give the digestive system a break, to turn around and to allow the body to not adapt or get so used to one method of approach all the time. That's why I like the idea of metabolic flexibility. That's why I think our metabolisms, we should be mixing up food sources. We should be trying to get the body to process fats. And the best my body ever functions is when I kind of switch diets up. Anytime I mix my diet around is when I feel like those first few weeks is when it's optimal. That's when you hear this about vegans. Oh, I got on the vegan diet. I feel amazing. I feel amazing, like amazing. I stopped eating all that crap animal protein. Well, what was your diet before then? Like that terrible movie Game Changers. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. That was the worst thing. I can't even talk to people about this anymore. That's how passionate I am about how bad this movie was. You take a group of firemen who have been drinking beers and eating Tostitos, and then you start giving them, fake vegan meat and vegetables and all this stuff. You remove all that other crap. No wonder they all lost a combined, what was it, 40 pounds in a week? Like, no shit. Like, okay, like, this is groundbreaking. Like this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
You just removed something from these people's lifestyle that was absolutely terrible. What would have happened if you take that same group of firemen and you suddenly started cooking for them some organic eggs every morning, cooked in coconut oil with some vegetables? And in the afternoon came around, you had a piece of wild fish with a slow burning carbohydrate, like a sweet potato and some vegetables, and then maybe some healthy snacks. And then the dinner looked the same as lunch. And then they continue not to train or just be active because they're firemen and they're running to jobs, and are they going to lose weight? Yes, 100%. They're going to lose weight. They'll probably lose the same weight. They'll probably maintain more muscle mass. And guess what? In a year, they're not going to feel like shit because they haven't had enough protein in their diet, enough animal protein in their diet. So
I did a consult with a local fire hall, and we were trying to investigate, what the issues were around their physical training and all that. And this one fire hall kept having guys miss work because they were doing CrossFit and beating the hell out of themselves and getting back injuries and shoulder injuries and all that. So that was stop doing CrossFit.
I don't think there's anything wrong with variability. I think it's important for people to try things, but like
Are
right
you
now,
talking everything or just diet?
well, to an extent, with training, diet. I mean, training to an extent, as long as we're not putting ourselves into a compromising position, right? But right now, like, I've been messing around with this device Lumen that I will not endorse yet because I am not certain. But there is a lot of validity to this thing. There is a lot of validity to metabolic flexibility. I'm not used to consuming this much fat. I'm used to consuming high protein, high carbs, moderate fat. So now I've actually adapted my carbs, which my body isn't really technically used to doing. And I've upped where am I replacing those calories from? Fats. I've got my fats up. And I notice from day to day, I'm able to adjust those numbers according to, what my levels are. And for me, allowing my body to come in every day and varying that up a little bit, I think has been really beneficial to me and my energy levels.
Has
Now, does that
anybody
what's
has
that?
anybody come up with like a periodization of diet where it changes whether by season or activity or
I don't know
in
by season, but Lumen's doing this right now. That's what's kind of fascinating about Lumen. I mean, they're um, according to your glycogen storages, it's adjusting where your carbohydrate and your fat level needs to be. So once it sees that your glycogen levels high, it's going to tell you your glycogen levels high. You're going to come in at like a 4 or a 5 reading, and that means one of two things: either your glycogen levels are high, or your protein levels are too high and your glycogen levels are too low. Like a friend of mine was consuming no carbohydrates, but his glycogen levels were always high because it was converting all that protein he was using. Too much protein, so it's converting too much of that to energy. So I think this stuff becomes fascinating because it gets us out of our comfort zones a bit and allows us to be open-minded to specific things. Um, I've been reverse dieting after my cover shoot for Muscle and Fitness. I feel like this is the best my body's looked after the week and a half coming off of a shoot. Is that because that I am paying attention to Lumen and the metabolic flexibility? It's trying to get my body to be metabolically flexible, or is it because I've just been following a plan and I've been somewhat tight on my macros and I haven't been going overboard with cheats where after shoots in the past, it's like you immediately go want to crush a pizza. I'm content. I'm staying there, which is why my body's probably tighter. So it could be a little bit of both. Who knows? I don't have the answer for that yet, which is why I'm not promoting it yet.
Yeah, well,
But
maybe you should create a photo shoot diet for everyone where you get 12 weeks and then we take a photo of you. Um,
well, that's granted. That's granted. Their goal is aesthetic, right? I mean, what about with people that you work with? The majority of them is just improve performance.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the side benefit is you will probably look better. But this
Yeah,
product, so you're doing sort of your own personal review. Is it possible for us to get somebody on the podcast to like from the company?
100%, one
Yeah,
hundred percent. I'm
that'd be
speaking.
interesting.
I'm scheduled to speak with the nutritionist the end of this month, and I'll talk to her and I'll invite her on. So let's plan
Yeah,
on her coming on in August. And I think she should talk about it. I think she should talk about questions. And I think what would be interesting is to maybe bring on Dr. Gabrielle Lyon to talk with us and her, maybe do a 4-way podcast
sure.
where we have a doctor firing off. I think that's interesting. And let's just go. If it's 90 minutes, it's 90 minutes. I think it'll be really informative. Um, but why don't we close on that and why don't we do this?
Yeah,
I think, listen, I don't want today to turn around and come off, and I want everyone to hear this, that I'm ever trying to be a know-it-all in anything. I'm not. There are so many questions in an industry where there's this much to know, and I know this much. And Derek, you would attest to it as well. There are just so many ways that you can train and so many ways nutritionally that you can eat that can benefit you. I have a very difficult time sometimes when people are like, here, this is the one way to do it. And I know, like, if we like, are you? Let me ask you a question. Um, if you're training an Olympic runner, are you going to tell them not to eat till the evening?
oh no, no.
Okay.
Yeah, or any athlete for that matter, right?
Oh,
um
okay. But at what point do we turn around and we say this is for a specific individual? I think fasting for a person who is not heavily active. I think fasting for a person who, um, you know, wants to pay attention to some type of a nutritional plan, or yes, struggles with timeliness of their eating. I think this could be, yeah, I think it could be beneficial. I think it'd be incredibly beneficial. But when you start taking high performance individuals, it's one thing to completely fast all the time. It's another thing to say, all right, you know what, I'm not going to eat before. I give a conference. I speak at a conference because my brain quality is higher. If that's the case, then do it. I'm never going to argue that. My question is, maybe if you consume the protein and the high levels of fat, will your mental focus be even better? For me, it is. For me, it is. I don't know how it is for you. You should try it next time and see what happens.
yeah, I don't know. It's the mental focus thing is um yeah, I think it's heavily dictated by all these things: sleep, how much exercise I get, the type of exercise I do in that day, hydration, so it's so hard to quantify, but
Mhm.
I'm just trying to find some general trends that work for me. And I think, that's the thing, individualization. It's not, like you said, one size doesn't fit all.
I think if it's working for you right now, go with it. If you start feeling that you overspend your powder a little bit and because you're active, your activity level starts outweighing your nutrition, I would then maybe cut back to the days where you're not exercising
Do
or
you
you're
take
too.
do you take a collagen supplement?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes. I like the one from Bubs.
Okay.
They make something called the Fountain of Youth, which I really like. But they mix maki berry in it, which is a very potent in micronutrients. Um, I'm fine with it. I think it's collagen's got higher levels of glycine. It can help improve sleep quality. It's not going to be good for muscle building, obviously, but that's not the only focus. Everyone's always focused on that. It's funny is I got a few people sent me research recently, like, oh, your body can only process 37 point something grams of protein for muscle building. I'm like, so what? Well, you're trying to tell us to get a gram per pound, a gram per pound, and that puts us way over. I'm like, that's for muscle building. What do you think? Protein's only consumed for muscle building? Like, there's other benefits of protein.
Yeah.
Like, there's other benefits of protein. So
Yeah.
if you get 50 grams, does that mean that's all? Does that mean that 13 grams are getting wasted? No, your body's going to utilize that additional protein for other areas of the body. So I don't know. Again, who's taking this research and or who's taking this information and how are they running with it? I'll close out on that.
Yeah. And is he 120 pounds?
Something to be said about that, man. Seriously, think about what I'm saying here. God bless David Sinclair. Really great. I can't be effective. I can't be effective in my job. Sorry about that. Oh my God. I can't be effective in my job if I'm 120 pounds. End on that.
All right.